Well, Stardust Memories, Veils, and the Big Bang is our title for today. And I want to start off with a quote from Wordsworth here to sort of sketch it out, and especially the Stardust Memories part of it. Uh, Wordsworth, it was a longer poem, Odes to Immortality. He said, "We all come into this world trailing clouds of glory that are all too soon forgotten." And Wordsworth was romantic and he was a transcendentalist too. He realized that we, at least he believed that we came from a previous life. We forget most of it. Forget most of it. All come into this world trailing clouds of glory that are all too soon forgotten. Dalai Lama himself, when he was talking about, the 14th time around, doesn't remember much of those previous lives. So that what comes across though uh, is the practice and the wisdom gained. There's something we carry forward, and but he didn't remember too many memories. Uh, had and so when we talk about memory here, we're starting with Stardust memories. Uh, uh, to remember, this would be an image of it when something is split, and then to remember it means to bring the two back into the one, bring the parts back into the whole. And so that's a sense of we're going to start out with that kind of image and all the way through. Okay. Um, to try to remember who we are, to lose everything that you know in a moment. We're not Homo sapiens. Would be nice if we were. I have met a few wise men and women, and they are memorable. But mostly we're Homo amnesians. We forget everything. We forget previous lives. We forget what we're doing. And so we're going to start with memory. And so I'm going to start with the memory of mine. And, to put it in the widest context, we talked a little bit about this for people who showed up for uh, the earlier meditation. But let's put this in a context of where we are now on this planet. We're in a situation that is soul sized, and we got to grow into it. And that's why this is a big talk in terms of range, to going all the way back to the Big Bang at the end, 13.8 billion years ago, they think, the astrophysicists. But so we got to cover a lot of stuff because things are soul sized now. We have a war in the Middle East that, you know, two nuclear armed powers, and there's a bunch of other nuclear armed powers, and who knows? It's spreading. Unfortunately, speaking for myself as an American, our administration, it's an example of an amateur hour. And I don't like the idea that amateurs are controlling nuclear weapons, and it's fire, fire. This kind of firepower spreads. Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna do a memory here. It's an Ash Wednesday story for me. I taught for 20 years 10 years in Houston, and then for 20 years in junior high in Bardstown. Before in 2002 starting loosely follow, and then 2020 starting heart to heart. So these are alternate lives for me. But when I was in the junior high, when Lent would come around, and also that's part of the thing, we're in the sacred season for Christians right now, uh, and also for Muslims, Ramadan Muslims. And now it's Lent, which is a 40-day preparation for Holy Week, the great drama, and then, the great mystery, resurrection. And so this 40 days, we have time to look inward, just as they do in Ramadan. And it's timed. This is the beautiful thing I like about the liturgical year in Christianity. It's timed, Lent means spring in Old English. And, it's this time of the year, it's time this time of the year. We're going to talk a little bit more about it on of the timing and how it's all set up on Easter itself. Yeah, I hope you can make that talk. But so there's a 40-day journey of Lent, which mirrors the 40 days that Jesus supposedly spent in the desert. Jesus had he had right off the bat in the Gospel of Mark, which is the earliest of the four Gospels that we recognize officially. Right off the bat, he has a mystical experience in the Jordan River. Goes in there to be baptized by John, and then the sky opens up, and he has a mystical experience. A voice tells him, "You're my son, and I love you." And it changes Jesus' life entirely. Uh, only had probably about 2 more years to live, and and his whole ministry is very short. But that changed his life. And then in Mark says, uh, and then the Holy Spirit uh, drove him out into the desert, farther into seclusion for 40 days. Now, 40 is biblical imagery of as long as it takes. 40 years in the desert for the Jewish tribes, 40 days in the desert, 40 days of Lent. 40 just means it was like a lifetime. People lived to be 40. So it really is code for as long as it takes. He was going into this retreat like we are today. And he we'll talk about that a bit. Uh, but my memory during the Lenten memory of reenacting this kind of thing. I was giving out ashes at the mass, the Ash Wednesday mass, and there's three or four of us giving out ashes. We had a little thing with ashes of burnt palm, and our fingers were wet, and we do it. We put a cross on their foreheads, and I was teaching at that time science. A science teacher went crazy, and so I had to shift over and take over for her. And so I was teaching about the Big Bang and the whole new story of the universe, the big story. And so I already was talking with the kids like this about this. And so when people came in, what I was supposed to say is, "Remember, you are dust, and to dust you shall return." Now that's an old tradition. Uh, it's called memento mori. Remember death. Comes from the Middle Ages, even farther back. Death is a big thing, even for primitive people. Way before when they're living in clans. When somebody died, that's the earliest sense that we had of of any kind of religion or spirituality. They buried people with objects for the journey, oriented, along the north-south axis. All this, they obviously had some sense that death was important, unlike the other beings around. And so that was called memento mori. Memento means remember, remember. Uh, Memory, the word memory comes from that. So remember death. Um, Don Juan, the Yaqui character in Carlos Castaneda's books, he's the guy who's there going around eating peyote and and accessing the spirit. But he said, always keep death on your left shoulder. Remember death. Now, the idea is that remember you're a dust, and the dust you shall return, which we're supposedly reminding people is, in a sense, realize this was a limited trip, and a lot of people, you were not taught that you have a lot of go-rounds, as the Tibetans teach, of course, but we're taught that hey, this is your life, you don't waste it, and so there's a good sense in the sense of remembering uh, that we're human beings and we're mortal, and so remember you are dust and the dust you shall return. Well, I was teaching the cosmic big story. So when people came up, I said, remember, you're a stardust, and to stardust you shall return. Because to give that sense of that we're connected to the cosmos, we come out of the cosmos, we're going back into the cosmos, and it just goes on, is my view. And well, I thought that was really great. Well, our pastor didn't. And I was banished forthwith from giving ashes forever, which was all right. I still think it's, remember you're a stardust. Remember you have an origin in the cosmos, and you're going to return. And to Stardust you shall return. There's a sense of return to where you came from, to home, not just in the grave. Well, anyway, I got banished. The pastor sort of hit the roof. But there was a sister from SCN who was a Reiki master, and Sister Emily, and she always said, as we ran into one another a few times after that, she said, "Best ashes I ever received." Yeah. So this brings in the Star Saver, the screensaver. If I can bring this up for a minute, uh, I want to. If those of you who came in late might not have seen it, yeah. Here we go. Yeah, if you're a Van Gogh fan, you'll recognize this, and actually maybe. Uh, if you've been to France, or if you're like maybe and you live in France, you'd know this scene. This was 1980 or 1888. It was almost the end of Van Gogh's life. He was only going to live a couple of years, and this is the Starry Night. Most people know the other one, but this is the earlier one. This is the 1888 version of from Van Gogh, and it was in Arles where he lived, and this is quite a vision. Uh, and we're going to look at the other Starry Night that happened a year later, the year of his death. But he really only had he had about a little bit more than a year left, a year and a half left when he painted this. But this is a brilliant painting. There's a lot going on in this painting, which we're going to unpack later when we talk about the Big Bang. Uh, but this is this first Starry Night. And this brings in the second part of, there's memento mori. Remember, uh, uh, remember death. But this brings in the other half of it that started to come in the 19th century. We can stop this here. I just wanted you to see that, especially guys on YouTube. Uh, uh, None of us know how much time we have left. That's why memento mori is good. You don't want to waste your life. Everybody says that doesn't matter wherever you are. But this brings in a second part that started to come in and be added to it in Van Gogh's century, and he was at the end of the 19th. Memento mori, memento vivere. Remember you will die, so remember to live. Memento vivere. And this balances the acknowledgement of mortality, memento mori, but it gives a kind of imperative to embrace life passionately, memento vivere, acting, as a call to urgency, really. I'm 76. Doesn't get more urgent than that. Well, I mean, some of you are a little older, but it's urgent. So urgent at any time because people didn't live that long. You they lived to be 40 in the Middle Ages, So, but no, it's still the same. A call to urgency and a kind of gratitude. I'm so grateful for having lived this long and grateful to have this day with you, grateful to have the next moment. So the urgency, gratitude, purpose, and the present moment comes in with memento vivere. And I think he caught that in that picture. Now, in the next year, he's going to have a falling out with Gauguin. Who knows what really happened? He mutilated his ear. He seemed to lose it, and he ended up in an asylum uh, to recover. And we're going to pick it back up at the end, but you can lose the vision. And he was a great mystic, but he got lost. He ended up in the asylum. Okay. But he was living that. He never lost that idea. He was trying to really, that's the thing that makes Van Gogh's paintings so, they mean so much to people because there's an urgency in them, there's life in them. Okay. So we'll carry that memento mori, memento vivere, uh, remember to live in the light of we have limited time here. Now, the veils part, this is a start with a statement by in Islamic literature. It's not in the Quran, it's in the Haditha, which is little like vignettes of the life of Muhammad. And in this one case, he's in the cave, and the cave of the heart. That's where he got all his revelations. The cave of the heart. He's in a literal cave, and then Allah speaks to him through the angel Gabriel, but Allah is speaking the great mystery, the divine, however you want to call it. We'll work with that in a bit. But he says, Muhammad, between you and me, there are 70,000 veils, but between me and you, there are none. Now, that is the trip right there. That's sort of the deal. The divine's telling the human being, between you and me, there's 70,000 veils, but between me and you, there are none. And that tells you what the work is in terms of we're perfect and whole at our very center, no problem. Okay. I have a poem called "In Light of Merton," and part of it, he talks about that very center that we have in that image when we use that image for meditation. There's that core center, and Merton said in the Conjectures of Guilty Bystander, he says that what is that center? He says, well, it's like a pure diamond blazing with the invisible light of heaven, connecting you to the cosmos, you see, and it's pure. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing to be fixed. And he says, furthermore, it's in everybody. The worst guy in the world and the greatest saint, they both have this pure wholeness, this preciousness in them. And he said, and Merton said, if we can only unveil it, remove the veils, 70,000 veils, when I use that quote with my junior high kids, and we spent a class talking about just that quote. One sharp little seventh grade girl, she was right. She said, "When did when did when did Muhammad experience that?" And I said, "Well, the seventh century." And she says, "Well, don't you think we have more than 70,000 veils between us and God now?" And I I laughed and I said, "Well, I never thought about that. 70,000 seemed like a lot." I said, "What do you think?" And she says, "Well, I feel like I have 7 million," which was really interesting. And so the job is not to fix yourself. There's nothing fixable. The job is of spiritual practice is dropping the veils, letting go, letting go, letting go. Drop those veils. When Jesus breathed his last in the Gospel of Mark, he breathed his last um, on the cross, and then in the next moment, and this is a wild thing to be writing for Mark. It's like a film cut. In the next moment, the temple and the veil was rent. The temple, the veil in the Jewish temple kept the normal people from seeing the Holy of Holies beyond the veil, where only the high priest could go. And he died to rend that veil. Well, it didn't, that's an amazing part of the gospel, that first gospel. It was like there was a connection. All this that he went through was to rend that veil between human beings and the Holy One. So that's sort of the work. And Merton said, if we could only unveil it and then live in light of it, this blazing, invisible light of heaven that's in all of us, if we could live in light of it, we would radiate a love that would make all the darkness and all the cruelty vanish forever. And he said, we practice to unveil it and to learn how to live in light of it. So it's about veils. It's about veils. And so he gets driven into the desert, which is there's not much happening out there, and a classic thing. Mark does it. Mark says, and he's going out there to be um, with the demons and the angels, with the light and the dark, because we all have that. And so that's all he says about it. Uh, but then Matthew and Luke are the other two of the other four evangelists that they start their fourth chapter, both of them. Right, starts out bang with with Jesus going in the desert and the temptations, and they deal with the three temptations. 500 years earlier, the Buddha had five temptations, but they track the same. They track the same, and so uh, The first temptation of Jesus, both Mark and Luke agree on, or Matthew and Luke agree on, was first temptation was, the devil comes up and, he's been out, he's not eating much. Who knows what he's eating? He's fasting. And in other words, he's getting rid of stuff, not putting stuff into him. And he says, "Well, wow, you're pretty great. I bet you could, I meant you're hungry." He said, "Could you turn this stone into bread?" And then you'd have something to eat. And that's the first temptation, the temptation to sell out a soul journey, which we're all on. Things are soul sized now. We have to develop our soul to deal with them, to sell your soul out for survival and security. Uh, a lot of people do. A lot of people run in this world. They don't just want security, they want total security. We'll give any money to the military just for national security. Okay. So that's the first thing. And Jesus said, no, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word of God. And so he gets by the first one. Now, the next two are flipped around depending on whether you read Matthew or Luke, but they're still the same. In Matthew, the next temptation of Jesus, the demon takes him over to a cliff, and he said, "Well, yeah, you really are something. I bet if you threw yourself off this cliff, because he's obviously not worried about survival and security, he said, if you threw yourself off this cliff, you're so special that uh, the angels will catch you. It's that temptation to play to the to for affection and esteem, to play to the crowd. You're so special, and Jesus doesn't go for that either. He resists that, and that was probably a big temptation for Jesus for a lot of reasons, which we'll look at in a minute. But he doesn't go for that either. So then he finally takes him up to the top of the temple and has him look at all of Jerusalem and whatever. And then he said, if you bow to me, you can control all this. So power and control. So we have the three temptations: survival and security. You could sell your soul for that. A lot of people do. Uh, Affection and esteem. You play to the crowd. You become famous. Yeah, and then you write a great book, and then the next book has to, what have you done lately, or make a movie, or this whole idea is sell out for what other people think of you. Just and then the third thing was you could have power and control here. And Jesus, there's a classic icon that of Jesus up on the top of the temple, and he's pointing up. He said, "No." He said, this is my only control. He's pointing to the heavens and to the divine. Not going to bow to that. So those are the three temptations, and uh, it's very interesting because we've been revisiting the Enneagram, and so check this out because it's exactly in the Enneagram, uh, the way the Enneagram is arranged. Uh, the core points, which we started with lately when we reviewed it, the core points are the three temptations. For the 5, 6, 7, and the six is the core point there. It's security and safety is the big thing, and fear runs all these, by the way. But fear runs the whole superficial enneagram, our defensive systems. But yeah, security and safety is the issue there for 5, 6s, and 7s. Everybody needs a modicum of security and safety. If you were in Tehran now, you wouldn't be at this meeting. You'd be hunkered down somewhere trying to get food. If you're in Gaza or in Haiti, everybody needs a little bit. This is Maslow's lowest level of needs. There, you need something, but if you sell your soul for it, in other words, you get addicted to it. They don't have the word addiction. They talk about the passions and the deadly sins, but a little bit of survival. We need enough floor under us so that we could even take time to go on retreat or something. But you can get hooked on this. How much safety can there be? In your gated community, you got all this money and whatever. People sell their soul for them. Now over at the 3 point, 2, 3s, and 4s, the big temptation is to play to the crowd. It's what others think of me. That's Jesus faced that too, and he was probably a 4 on the enneagram in my estimation. So that might have been the biggest thing to be, to be special, to be, and he doesn't go for it. And then up on top of the Enneagram where I live, eight, nines, and ones, it's about power and control. They offer it to him. He doesn't want it, you know. And so the Enneagram does track this out. And like these nodes, these three things hold all the other 70,000 veils, you know. Yeah, these are the important little things, whether there's 10,000 veils or 20 or 30,000 veils at each point, and or millions of veils. But these are the key things that hold them all. And so that Jesus had to go through that. Buddha had it in five because in Tibetan Buddhism, they have a pentagram, not an enneagram, not a 9 points. They have a 5 pointed kind of thing. And then they have the five temptations there. Doesn't matter. These are all places where your energy leaks out. If you get addicted to any of these, again, everybody needs a little bit of affection and esteem. As Weller says, we're all born to see 40 pairs of eyes. You know, you put somebody in solitary confinement, and very few people won't go crazy because there's nobody there, no affection, no esteem, nobody. So we need some of that. And thank goodness, that along the line, there was somebody that looked at you like they saw who you were, that you were holy. The God in me greets the God in you. Somebody saw that perfection in you. All it takes is one person. That's your guru, by the way. And everybody needs a little bit of power of control. You had to get into this Zoom thing, and things go wrong, and you have to, but if right now the guys destroying this planet are in love with power and control. And Jesus stood up against them. He said to the people who love power, he posed the power of love, which is what's at the center in the big open space. See, so but this is where energy leaks out. And when I was young, I was reading Jack Kerouac on the road. I thought it was like emotion and all this kind of stuff. But at 76, for me, the most important thing is energy. And and these are places where big leakage of energy when you get hooked on any one of these things. Inordinarily, you need and it shows what you repress at these places too. But mainly, it's just if safety is dominates your life, uh, energy leaks out at all these places, and we can't avoid. Uh, oh, especially the older you get, you better see where your life energy is leaking out. Okay, so that's what this is about. And again, your immortal diamond self is there. There's nothing to fix. The enneagram is not about trying to fix yourself. It's not a self-improvement project because that core self, whatever you call it, uh, doesn't need fixed. It needs to be unveiled. As he said, the more that you unveil it, gets thinner and thinner, more of the love light comes out, and you become a force in this world. You become the power of love. Well, all right. So that's a little bit about the veils, and so it's about dropping the veils. Bruce Coburn, who was singing to us, Lord of the Starfields. I also had a thing that was you probably didn't hear if you came in late. It was called laughter, and I think that's important for two things before we move on to the Big Bang. You got to keep your sense of humor when things are dark. That's why authoritarians don't like Stephen Colbert and these guys because they're comedians. They keep your sense of humor up. If you lose your sense of humor, no matter when, uh, you lost your balance, and the darkness can grab you. So, in this song called "Laughter," one of the great lines, he says, "I laugh for the dirty window pane, hiding the love within." Ha 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 ha, as he says, and he goes through a bunch of crazy things that are happening that are sort of sad, but he has this sense of laughter. And Colburn's a mystic as Van and as Merton was, and they can be light about it because they know that inner diamond nature is there. And you can, Van has a song called Van Morrison has a song called "I'm Just Cleaning Windows." And it's a spiritual song, but it's got this guy cleaning windows and all this stuff happening in Belfast. But in the end, that's that's the job. I laugh for the dirty window pane, hiding the love within. Same image of veils, you see, same image of veils. So that's really the work. Uh, and you know, we're meant to flourish. We're meant to actually get in touch with that energy and bring it into the world. That's the only thing that's going to change this darkness is to bring some light into it. And we're meant to flourish, but flourishing shuts down when we become addicted to any or all of those um, to security, survival, because this is not going to survive. My body and mind and personality, Josie, is gone at some point. Uh, and if I'm worried about living to be 100, you sort of back away from everything. You just, But I don't care about being 100. I care about being alive right now, and I know, and dropping the veils. So addiction to any of these things, again, it's good to have a roof over your head. You could be here today, but to be addicted to it, have to have a bigger house, a safer house, national security. We're destroying the world because we want to be secure. It's an addiction. That leads to kind of entropy, a loss of uh, um, of life. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Big Bang now. Uh, Astrophysicists say that all of this stuff everything started somewhere around 13.8, 14 billion years ago. There was what they call the Big Bang. Well, what came before that? They have no answer for that. And they also don't. If you think the bang banged and then there was silence, no, that's not. It's still banging. It's still banging. And the universe is expanding. And so you ask the question, what is the universe expanding into? They don't have an answer for that. So you actually come down when and this is where there's no break between science and spirituality, science and religion. We have, churches here and you got the scientific institutes here and you've got different buildings, but really there's no break in it. Because when you go far enough in science, whether you go into ultra small things like quantum physics or astrophysics, the whole shebang, either way, those physicists end up talking like mystics because there's mystery. It's all great mystery. They can measure certain things, but in terms of what came before that, why did that happen? Hmm. Yeah. What we do know is there's a life force energy that produced matter, produced sentient beings, uh, and then it produced sentient beings like us that actually are conscious. We can actually step back and look at the whole thing. And we know, uh, furthermore, we know we're going to die, which is, I'm not sure, the bird out in that's out in the bush there knows that. It's singing away. Might be a cat grab it in the next minute. It doesn't, it's not aware of that. And that's sort of a plus minus to be human because that's where a lot of our anxiety comes from because we know this form's not going to last forever. We see animals die. We see people in our family die younger than us. Yeah. So, but there's a life force energy, and that created matter, created life, created consciousness. It all came out of this Big Bang. No, we make up words for this. We throw words at it. We don't understand it. It cannot be understood by the left brain, but we name it. Whether it was a great spirit, the earliest version of it was the mother. You look at the oldest stuff we have was matrifocal. They have pictures of pregnant, women because the women gave birth to people, so they saw the universal life force energy being a woman, and then it became a father about 10,000 years ago. It was a mother, much more a mother or a spirit for much longer than that. But then it became patriarchal, became the father. Uh, so those are words. Our Father who art in heaven. still, it gets cloaked. Those are all veils because if you think it's if you you know um, if you give a name to it, it doesn't work. The Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. You can't. But we throw names at it, and then Brahman is the earliest one, and is sort of the creator God figure, the big banger. Elohim, Allah, Buddha nature, Christ, God. These are all concepts and names that we just try to point to it, but it's not it. Finger pointing to the moon is not the moon. So it's sort of tomato, tomato, what you want to call it. George Lucas called it the Force. Joseph Campbell liked that. He said that's what it is. Dante called it a force. He says he called it love. 13th century. He had this whole thing schemed out. Amazing, the Divine Comedy. He called it a comedy because it ends well. He's sort of a precursor of Julian of Norwich, who says, all will be well, and all will be well, and every manner of thing will be well. Well, that's what it really means to be a comedy. It doesn't mean Dante went through hell and purgatory, which was all rough stuff, but it ends well because he ends up in paradise in heaven. And so that's what a comedy means. It was just called the commedia, really, and then they were named it later the Divine Comedy. We throw names at the mystery. We do. And but the idea that there's a life force energy that's afoot here, and it doesn't matter what you call it. You just call it any name you want or no name at all. For instance, Allah means the nothing, the no thing, the thing that cannot be named. The Jewish guys they won't really print the name of God because they knew some things. Jesus called it. Jesus had two names for the great mystery. One was Allah, which is very close, becomes Allah. That's sort of the presence of the divine. Sometimes you just feel like you're in the presence of it. It's sort of a noun form. Uh, Jesus was playing both sides of the street. He was very interesting. There's a presence. Sometimes you're in the presence of somebody and you feel something special. For just this moment, there's a presence. And so that's something that's stable, at least for that moment. That's what they all talk about when they talk about your core immortal diamond or true self or whatever words you want to throw at it, that there's something that's there and is always there. And nothing changes that. You get all messed up on the outside and you can go to jail or become the president and all that. But if you're out of touch with that thing that's that's the pearl of great price that Jesus talks about. But it's hidden, you see. It's hidden in a field. The lamp is hidden under the bushel basket. So Merton called it the hidden wholeness, you see, that's been veiled. And our job is to, they look for the lost coin. These are all Jesus images for, in other traditions, it's the same thing, you see. So there's nothing to be fixed. It is to be unveiled. It is to be found. This is the Grail quest. All through the Middle Ages, they're looking for this Holy Grail. Well, they're really looking for this. You can play it out with other images, you see. Yeah. But there is a force. It doesn't matter what you call it, but it does matter that you align yourself with it and also that you don't let that life force leak out in all kinds of directions that don't have any, how many gates can you put up? How much money can you get? How many likes can you get on the Facebook before you're really satisfied? It never satisfies you. That's the reason none of these things work. How much control can you have? Well, Venezuela is nice, but now I want Iran and then I want Cuba and all the crazy guys, they think they're going to take over the world and it all turns to dust. You end up blowing your brains out in the bunker. It doesn't work. And but more of all, it wounds a lot of people in the process. And you know, when you get shot, life force energy is coming out of you. A bomb hits you and you're vaporized. You know, nothing happens to the immortal diamond, but it's sort of a drag. You know, uh, it's painful. See, so this is tricky territory you get into. So I want to end with a poem that's come out lately. It's called "What Every Mystic Knows" because we are all mystics to be. Mystic isn't something like rare or anything. We're all geared to be mystics. In other words, to align ourselves with the great mystery, which is true. It's Ruby says dancing with the Holy One is a very difficult partner to dance with. Yeah. So we're mystics in training. That's why we take time out and do things like this, and why you have a spiritual practice. And now there's something that's worked its way into my life. It's a 6 word declarative sentence that has three pronouns in it and then three other words, and it's making its way into my poems. And so that this what every mystic knows, it's not it's coming. It comes to all mystics in some form, and so I'm going to talk about it here. But here's what every mystic knows. This is what we're going to end with, and then we'll get a chance to sit with all this because again, things are soul sized. We need to access that life force energy, and it's in us, and we drop into it. You get a we get a recharge. Whatever mystic knows, we're born in great mystery. We live in great mystery. We die in great mystery. And if we don't love in great mystery, we won't love at all. Born in great mystery, we live in great mystery, we die in great mystery. And if we don't love in great mystery, we won't love at all. Oh, great mystery, I am through you, so we live in, we are born in great mystery, we live in great mystery, we die in great mystery. And if we don't love in great mystery, we won't love at all. Oh, great mystery, I am through you, so we, so close, we ignite the Big Bang resurrection. Oh, great mystery, I am through you, so we, so we, so close, we ignite the Big Bang of resurrection. Now, uh, the I want to just open this up for just a couple of minutes, and you know you can't explain a poem, but I do like to open it up, and I want to use Van Gogh's Starry Night over the Rhone to enlighten. Uh, do we have it here? Oh well, I have another version of it. We'll use that. Yeah, and that has the line from the Cobra thing. Oh, love that fires the sun, keep me burning. Now, you can see a couple things. I am through you, so we. Uh, in this picture, notice the two boats, how close they are to each other. And then here's two lovers walking together. And actually, Van Gogh had a woman in mind, and that the male figure on the left has his classic hat. But they're uh, they're so close. Uh, that and this is a picture of that kind of memento vivere. He was putting in his mind a picture where everything was humming. Okay, this picture, uh, Starry Night over the room. And I think it sort of picks up what I'm talking about and what it means what it means to have, will come to heart to heart. I am through you, so we. Uh, and the three pronouns are there: I, you, we. I am through you, so we. It's exactly what the Hindus are talking about when they go namaste. The God in me greets the God in you. There's something about um, becoming close to either one other person. We often have 25 or 30 or 40 people here now. What a blessing. I am through you, so we. And so we, so close, ignites the Big Bang, the resurrection. Resurrection's a mystery. What did that really mean? We lost it. We spent time getting plastic grass and eggs and all that. We've lost the significance of what we're trying to talk about here. The fact that, as Coburn says, "Oh love, that fires the sun, keep me burning." And this group does that for me. I feel more alive now than I did in 2020, and I'm 5 years older. We're all getting older. Doesn't mean you burn out, you say. But there's something going on here. Every mystic knows that. And he was painting it here. We're going to look a little bit later at Starry Night from a year later, where lots of awful things happened to Van Gogh in that last year. A lot of great things happened, but and the Starry Night looks different. Yeah, we'll take a look at that later. But for now, this is good enough. So thank you for listening. We can stop the recording and take a little break. We'll be back at 15 after the hour we can sit with all this together. Thanks for listening.